What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today I'm going to be doing the camera comparison that everybody has been asking for, and that is the Google Pixel 6 Pro versus the iPhone 13 Pro Max versus the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. So a huge redesign on the camera this year on the Pixel 6 and this Pixel 6 Pro, and you can see that there is 4K video now, so let me know what that looks like here, and let me know which one looks the best. Also let me know what microphone sounds best, and then what we're going to do is test these out in every single condition to see if the Pixel can knock out these two reigning champs, and we're gonna see who's the best at the end of 2021. Let's do this. Before we dive in, let's talk about the testing process. All of these photos and videos were taken on auto mode with the stock camera apps. No edits were made whatsoever. Everything is straight out of the camera. The S21 Ultra does have a pro mode, so if you have that time and knowledge, you can dial in for that perfect shot if you want to, but as usual, I focus on results that everyone can get. All AI modes that can be disabled were turned off to make things as fair as possible. So let's start with the daytime pictures. This is definitely going to be preference based, and yes, there were times where the pictures just looked so similar it was hard to tell them apart, but wow, in some scenarios they all hit on different white balance, saturation, and tone. My preferences do go back and forth between all three of them, but if I had to generalize, I would say that the Pixel 6 Pro and the Galaxy S21 Ultra have a more similar processing style, where the iPhone 13 Pro Max most of the time does its own thing, so let me know which one that you prefer in the comment section below. For the most part, the Pixel 6 Pro bumps up the shadow detail on most of the shots. This makes the overall HDR stand out without going over the top. It does go back and forth with the iPhone when it comes to the brightest approach, but again, they all can be inconsistent at times, so results will vary. It's been about a week since I've been using the Pixel 6 Pro, so let me talk about some of the things that I really love about the camera and some of the hiccups that I discovered along the way. I think that the computation on Google's side might not always be the most accurate, but it does produce the most pleasing shots in some scenarios. When taking landscape shots like this, look at how it balances the overall scene. Incredible dynamic range. The whites are super white, no tint like there is on the Samsung, and Apple's approach is just too crushed in the shadows, almost making it look like it was shot on an ND filter. But on Google's side, look at the shadow detail in the trees, it's pronounced, and the pavers are also bright enough to represent the scene well, so kudos to Google. I also want to say that Google's sky interpretation here is the most accurate, so while the iPhone still looks really good, like I said in previous camera comparisons, Apple is favoring the saturation this year, which looks great to share right out of the camera on social media, but shooters who want that accuracy might need to utilize that raw capture or dial back the saturation a little bit. This all does depend on the scenario, because I've had times where the white balance is miscalculated by the Pixel. This is when the sun was going down. While stylistically the Pixel's outcome is very nice, the S21 Ultra had the best rendition here. What I am disappointed in is the consistency of dynamic range in certain scenarios like this on the Pixel 6 Pro. Even though again the shadow details are phenomenal, the sun blowout is tough to see. Also, look at this shot with the ultra wide. The sky is blown out here, so I was surprised by this. Granted, this is early and Google has plenty of time to update the software, so keep that in mind. I have noticed some clipping as well in the clouds on some of the shots too, so expect a few hiccups here and there, but this new sensor for Google is exactly what they needed. Very impressed with the level of detail in certain shots like this leaf. It might have a little too much contrast, and the other two were more accurate in color, but when you punch in, you can see how much detail there is there. Consistency again is the problem though, because this is a picture of the same tree just moved over slightly, and when you crop in again, they all look similar, but I wanted to show you the prior shot to show you the potential of the new sensor on the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. The computational photography is only going to get better from here, and these shots here prove what Google can do. Red flowers are always hard for smartphone cameras in bright lighting. The Pixel does the best where the S21 Ultra struggles the most. Again, a lot of people might prefer the iPhone 13 Pro Max's processing this year with the big boost in color vibrancy and contrast, and I don't blame you if you like that look. The iPhone, like I said in my last comparison, almost over accentuates the detail, but the Pixel is right there with it, which is nice to see. Second thing I was surprised by is the portrait mode. I was surprised how many mistakes the Pixel Pro made. Look here around the edges. The iPhone messed up as well, but Google's inconsistency of the background blur makes it look even worse. Here it's not a huge mistake, but look at my son's hair. It just blended it into the background. So it's things like this that I noticed. With natural roll-off out of the camera, I think the iPhone 13 Pro Max looks the nicest. It's definitely a little too aggressive with that HDR, but it really did a great job here, where the Pixel always looks like it just cut out the subject and applies a linear blur to the background. When it comes to the Pixel at this time at launch, don't take portrait shots with a 2x zoom because it produces a super digital look. Now, this is a really great example. When looking at it from your phone, you probably won't notice easily, but when you crop in, look at how digital the image looks. I was actually surprised by this because it looks like it's not even using the telephoto at all, but just digitally cropping into the main sensor. In this shot, again, looking at it from the phone, I didn't notice it as much, but punch into the picture, you can see how bad the artifacting is. So I hope that Google sees this and fixes it in the future. Think of this as a friendly bug report, Google. Here's an example of the default focal lengths on portrait mode. I think I like the pixels the best here. The S21 Ultra getting below the arm of the chair is very impressive. Again, here is the 2x portrait on the Pixel, really over sharpened and processed looking, where the 3x on the other two did a great job. I think the iPhone takes this one with the best balance on the harsh lighting on my wife's skin, where the S21 Ultras is clipped. Next, let's talk skin tones. They all do a great job, but the Pixel takes the middle ground here, which I think makes for the most accurate interpretation. There's a little too much yellow on the S21 Ultra. The oversaturation on the iPhone picks up a little bit more red, but the slightly muted approach of the Pixel is my favorite. This same approach applies to the front-facing camera, which is excellent, by the way, during the day. There are times where it does bring too much contrast to the skin, but it's nowhere near as drastic as the iPhones. They all do go back and forth, but I do love the fact that you can use the ultra-wide field of view on the front-facing camera for portrait mode. It's so nice when you have a big head like I do. Here's a few more examples with the front-facing camera. Again, skin tone-wise, I really like the approach that Google is taking. All of this depends on lighting scenarios, of course. None of them could catch the AirPods in my ears, which is totally normal, but let me know which one that you like more in the comment section below. So let's move on to the features of the camera systems, which I think is more important than ever. Even though that the S21 Ultra is the oldest phone out of the bunch, it could still be the most flexible camera system. It's the only phone out of the three to have a high-resolution 108 megapixel sensor. The other two are impressive with 300% scale crop, but when you go into a staggering 1000% scale, look at how clear the 50th sign is still on this image with all of that brick detail still retained. So if you like to print out your photos, this is an awesome feature to have. The Pixel 6 Pro does have a new telephoto camera this year, and it does give you 4x optical zoom. Zoom is perfect for gator sightings here in Florida. Here is that 4x optical zoom on the Pixel 6 Pro, so you can see what that looks like again. 20x hybrid zoom is not bad on the Pixel 6 Pro whatsoever. It's much better than I thought it would be. Next to it is the 15x digital zoom on the iPhone, and look at how crisp that 10x optical zoom is on the S21 Ultra. I wish this was on the other two phones. And then 30x hybrid zoom also looks decent on the S21 Ultra too, so it is the most flexible camera. I just want to give you one more example of the zoom ranges. This is the main sensor, and then there is the 4x on the Pixel, 3x on the other two. Here is the 20x zoom again on the Pixel. It's more detailed and it's better than the 15x digital zoom on the iPhone, but that iPhone shot does look pretty good for digital. And there's a 30x on the S21 Ultra. Look at the detail here, it's really impressive. And of course, if you want to get crazy with it, here is that 100x zoom. Unfortunately, there is no macro mode on the Pixel 6 Pro this year, but the minimum focusing distance is good, so you can get that artistic bokeh from that big sensor. The iPhone and Samsung both switched to the ultra wide angle to get high quality macro shots, which you can have a lot of fun with. It all depends if you really need this or not, but it's nice because it also works in video as well. But there is a workaround like there always has been for most phones. You can just use the telephoto like I did here on the Pixel 6 Pro. It's not the exact same focal length, of course, but it's a workaround. There are a few new features that are on the Pixel 6 Pro this year. This is the action pan mode where it blurs things in the background which are moving, which can create some awesome shots. You don't have to do anything, just take a shot as normal and it can create some cool movements in the background. Here on the carousel, it didn't work very well with the multiple axis movement, but in other scenarios, it does work well, so I'm sure this will get better over time since this is in beta. There's also a long exposure mode, which is very easy to use as well at night. I was able to get some cool shots with this. I love this because it just takes the difficulty out of it. It's not perfect, but it's cool anyway, so this is something to try out when you get your Pixel 6 or Pixel 6 Pro. So let's talk video before jumping into low light. I'm happy to say that I'm seeing an improvement in video this year on the Pixel 6 Pro. It's always been a weak point of Pixel phones, and as you can see this year, it's doing well during the day. It can capture up to 4K 60 frames per second just like the iPhone can. The Galaxy S21 Ultra does have up to 8K video capture if you want to use it. I personally stick to the 4K video because I think it looks best overall. The iPhone still has the best video on a smartphone. I feel like a broken record when I say that, but it's true. This is a little bit more difficult lighting when the sun is going down, so it's not a perfect scenario, but when you crop in, you can still see that the iPhone has the most detail. Look at the roof of this building, and the noise reduction is the cleanest out of the three, a decent amount of noise on the other two. If you like shooting video with the ultra wide, then here's a good example of how much wider the other two cameras are in comparison to the Pixel. I wish it was a little wider. If you wanted to see the transitions between the lenses, here you go. I don't see a huge difference in between them. They all seem pretty smooth. You can see that the Pixel 6 Pro video is better, but it still doesn't look as good as the iPhone or the S21 Ultra. But to be honest, I used to avoid shooting video with my prior Pixels because it just looked that bad. So I'm glad to see that Google is listening and taking video seriously. Here's what the daytime stabilization looks like. This is just standard mode, but remember there is super steady mode on the S21 Ultra, and there's also a crop stabilization mode on the Pixel 6 Pro with the drop to 1080p. The combo of optical image stabilization and digital stabilization on the Pixel should make for a smoother video, but I'm noticing that there are more micro jitters in the walking footage. The other two look much smoother to me, so let me know if you see things differently here. I can't forget about cinematic mode and portrait mode video on the iPhone and S21 Ultra. There is no mode like this on the Pixel, but with that big sensor, the natural depth of field is pretty good. Maybe one day Google will add this. It's not a huge deal, but it can be good to give your video a cinematic look. Both do have to be in the right conditions, and it does need some work, but if you want this, you're going to have to go Apple or Samsung. Okay, so let's jump into what everybody's been waiting for, and that is the low light. And I think this is what I was most excited about because that huge sensor should make a difference, right? Well, technically, yes it does, but there are some quirks that throw a monkey wrench into the nighttime experience, so let me explain. They all have great night modes, and when they hit, they all look fantastic. They are all different in their approaches, and it will most likely be a personal preference thing. But the problem that I was having is the length of exposure on the Pixel 6 Pro. It exposes about double the time the iPhone exposes for. So handheld, I was getting a lot of soft images, as you can see here, but then when I put it down on a surface to stabilize, look at how much sharper it is. Here's a screen recording example with the portrait mode. You can see that the other two finish exposing, and then the Pixel just keeps going for another 2 to 3 seconds, and this introduces a lot of shake, causing blurry images. It was frustrating to say the least. The Samsung was right behind the Pixel with exposure time, but it was still about a second or two less, creating less movement blur. This gentleman was walking out, and you can see that the Pixel ghosted him. The Ultra was much better at keeping him intact, but the iPhone's 1 second exposure did the best. On top of the blurry images, I was also getting weird color introduction and blending. Look at my wife's face here. There's a blue patch that just appeared out of nowhere. It's not to be seen at all on the other two cameras. And if you look at the foliage here where the blue light was hitting it, look at how choppy that is. It looks like the processing just never finished. So I'm hoping that this is just a software bug. And Google, please, if you are listening, use Tensor's AI to detect handheld movement and shorten the exposure time. This would make the experience so much better. The reason why I know that this is just software that needs to be tuned is just how great the single snap experience is. I tried to get night sight to work again and again with multiple shots. It just kept failing. And then I just took a shot without it. And look at how amazing that looks. I found myself bypassing the night sight a lot and just using the single snap because it's really great. Look at the saturation, the contrast, and the accurate white balance. It's excellent. So naturally, anything with Google, it will get better over time. Sometimes the single snapshot came out better than the night sight. I mean, here they are side by side. I mean, am I wrong? Let me say this though, when night sight hits, it hits hard. It captures a lot of light and retains a lot of information. Look here at the texture of the roof areas. You can clearly see all of the straw detail. That's incredible. Here's a shot without night mode. And here's a shot with night mode, and you can see that the Pixel 6 Pro captures a ton of shadow detail. Look at the tree, the ground, and even the person working, you can see them clearly. The iPhone breaks the saturation dial to 1000 here on this one, which some people might like. When you punch in, the good thing is the iPhone and Pixel are the cleanest when it comes to noise. That's great to see. The S21 Ultra with some weird artifacts and color rendition on this one with the most noise. Just to make sure all my findings were correct, I wanted to try out some different scenarios besides the theme park, so I went to Celebration to see if the results were going to be any different. You can see here the Pixel showing that sensor size difference with the brightest shot. Then check out the night mode here. All the clouds come to life. When you punch in, you can see that the S21 Ultra has the nicest in-between with noise and detail. The iPhone only exposed for 1 second versus the 5 seconds on the Pixel, but the noise is not present on the iPhone due to the contrast and lack of shadows. The ultra wide is the same. Usually the iPhone only exposes for 3 seconds in dark conditions, where the S21 Ultra does about 5 seconds, and the Pixel does about the same. The Pixel's ultra wide camera without night mode is not great. There's a lot of noise there, more than the other two for sure, but when you kick on that night mode, it makes up for it big time with arguably the best shot. Sometimes the iPhone creates a vignetting effect with night mode shots. All depends if you like that or not, but I've noticed that more often lately. But night mode on the ultra wide on the Pixel is legit, so make sure you use night mode when taking ultra wide photos at night. It was hard to call a definitive winner when it comes to dynamic range because I saw that the Pixel did better with the light here and had the most balanced overall image, but back at Magic Kingdom, the S21 Ultra was the only one to tame that harsh uplighting on the tree, so it all depends. This is why for me, I focus on more on the time it takes to expose. The iPhone had less light coming in and it might lack some details, but it does allow it to look more like nighttime, so I do like that. So I can say it's more natural at times, but that oversaturation in some of the shots makes things look very unnatural. So again, this will all be personal preference, but it is impressive what the iPhone can do in such a short time exposing. That can't be denied. So if you want to see the opposite end of the spectrum and you want to see what these can do on a tripod, here you go. Here's the shot before maximum exposure so you can see what it's like. And then here are the results. The Pixel exposed for about a minute and a half, and the iPhone did 15 seconds, and the S21 Ultra did 30 seconds. All of them look very impressive. It was a cloudy night, so I couldn't test moonshots or astrophotography, but the Pixel did expose for about 3 minutes, the iPhone about 15 seconds again, and the S21 Ultra for about 30 seconds. Bad example, but I thought I would share anyways. Since we are talking about tripod shots, let's do a night mode zoom test with the stabilize. I don't suggest doing this one without a tripod, but here is the 4x shot. The Pixel, wow, it did a fantastic job compared to the 3x on the other two. The Pixel 6 Pro 10x Hybrid also looks sweet. 15x digital for the iPhone and 10x optical for the Samsung, which looks the best. Then 20x for the Pixel 6 Pro doesn't look terrible at all, much better than I expected, but remember, this is on a tripod, not handheld. Portrait mode at night is more of the same. Both of the other phones were able to cut out my hair properly, but the Pixel did not. It blended it into the background, but I do have to say it does have the best skin rendition. The iPhone rendition makes me look like I was a part of a bonfire accident, where the S21 Ultra's yellow color pickup is so heavy. Here, I think a lot of people will prefer the S21 Ultra, but the skin is more accurate to the scene on the Pixel. Here the Ultra did the best on my son, but the Pixel dropped the ball on white balance, so it just did not turn out good at all. The front-facing camera in medium low light is excellent. I like the shot here. It has the best detail and skin tone, but when it gets super dark, the Pixel's front-facing camera is arguably the worst. The S21 Ultra is the better one out of the three in this scenario. Kick in that night mode, and I think the iPhone 13 Pro Max has the best rendition of environment and skin tone, but they all could use some work in low light. So what about nighttime video? Well, I was surprised the potential that the Pixel 6 Pro had at night, the aggressive metering when the fireworks were going off. I was impressed with the sharpness, detail, and color, and I thought, okay, we might have a match here for the iPhone 13 Pro Max. But as soon as the super bright fireworks were taken away, then you can see that the noise is introduced right back again, where the iPhone still remains clean. So again, the iPhone 13 Pro Max, the best video on a smartphone still. Here's another example of the potential that the Pixel 6 Pro has. This area is extremely dark. It's hard to see across the lake. The iPhone is the most accurate to the scene, but you can see that the Pixel is showing it clearly. The S21 Ultra is showing it too, but almost all of the detail is lost. You punch in, then you can just see how much noise there is on the Pixel and the S21 Ultra, where the iPhone's detail is retained. But if Google can tone down that noise, wow, the potential is absolutely there. What's great is there's a very easy way to control the contrast and white balance right in the software. So if you want me to do a cinematic video with the Pixel 6 Pro, let me know and I will make that happen. Another place where I saw the Pixel 6 Pro struggle is in the walking footage in low light. It's kind of a bouncy surface where I'm walking, but you can see that the Pixel and the Ultra are having a harder time with impact of the bounce of my walk, but the Pixel for sure is having the worst time with it. The final thing that I wanted to test and show you is the light flares. A lot of people think that the iPhone is the only one with this problem, and it's not true. All phones have this, but the iPhone's is just more pronounced. When you start to move down, the flares get softer on the other phones, but the iPhone stays pretty predominant, and it does show up in a lot of photos. But I just wanted to show you that it is present on all three of these phones. So in conclusion, the Pixel 6 Pro does have the potential to be the nighttime photo king once the software can be tweaked. A lot of the times it does produce the brightest image, but in saying that, the Pixel isn't the Apple or Samsung killer that I think a lot of people were hoping for. It is good for sure, but I would go into this Pixel 6 Pro purchase with the expectation that it has a little while to go before it reaches its full potential. But remember, you always buy based on what's presented today and not what is promised for the future. I can't quite call a winner yet, but it was really fun doing this comparison anyways. I'll be sure to revisit this again at the end of the year. So if you enjoyed this, make sure you hit that like button. It took so much time to do. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more camera comparisons like this one, and let me know if you are Team Pixel, Team iPhone, or Team Galaxy. Let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.